This is Gemara in Kesubos Daf Yomi page. Today's shiur on the incredible day of Tisha B'Av, or actually Asara B'Av, has been generously sponsored by a close friend of the Daf in the honor of his daughter's birthday. It's actually a very special birthday, her bat mitzvah. Mirz Hashem, the learning of the entire Chabura should allow her to be entered into the Olam mitzvahs and to only see incredible nachas from the entire family. Holding on the bottom of Lamed Aleph and Beis, the two dots, 4 lines to the bottom. Abala Chaisai, Vala Chais Aviv. Continuing the din in the Mishnah, the din that if one violates, one forces a woman to have relations, is a special kanas, a special fine of 50 shekel kesef that he has to pay. And we pick it up that the Gemara discusses one who is Bala Chaisai, his sister. One who's boiled his sister, his father's sister, his mother's sister, his wife's sister, his brother's sister, his father's brother's sister, Anida, etc. All of these cases, he has to pay the special kenas of 50 shekel kesef. Asks the Gemara, I'll ask you a contradiction. Eluin aloikin, a Mishnah Malkis that says the following people, the following acts are chayiv malkis. The Mishnah lists the exact same list of all the cases in our Mishnah. Where our Mishnah said there's a kenas, the Mishnah Malkis says what? That you get malkis. So what's the kasha? As we move over to Lamed Beis and Alpha, we know the rule is they like mishalim. That any time you have two obligations, you have malkis and payment, you don't get both. So how are you telling me that our Mishnah says you pay? The Mishnah there, he says you get malchus, something has to give, it can't be both, because we don't do both together. So either our Mishnah's wrong or their Mishnah's wrong, but something doesn't add up. Explains Ula, Amar Ula, Loikasha kan b'achayse nara, kan b'achayse b'geris. So attempt number 1, and we'll see another attempt more towards the end of the day into tomorrow, says Ula, the difference between the two Mishnayos is the age of the girl. If the girl is a Naira, that's our Mishnah. Elu Naira, says the title of our Mishnah was, that if the woman is a Naira, the age between 12 and 12 and a half, as we discussed a few days ago, that's when there is a Kanas. The Mishnah on Makis that says the same girls, but no Kanas and yes Malkis, that's when, that's by a Bagaris, that's a girl who is 12 and a half years old. Asks the Gemara, Chayse Bagaris Nami, is the same thing by the sister? Are you telling me that the Mishnah Malkis is talking about a sister who's a Bagares, who's 12 and a half years old, and that's when you get Malkis? But it can't be. But if the girl is 12 and a half years old, there's 2 other payments that you have to pay. There's the payment of humiliation and depreciation. So how could that woman receive Malkis? Excuse me, how could the man that did this to the sister receive Malkis? We know that you don't get both. We see that there's the fine of Baishis and Begam. Answers the Gemara b'shaita. The girl is a shaita. Since she is a shaita, there's no humiliation, there's no depreciation. So what is there? Nothing, no payment, and rather there's only the malchus that the man gets. Ask the Gemara 1 minute. What do you mean? She might be a shaita, she might be deranged, but at the end of the day it's painful. She just was forced to have relations. This man just raped her, so has to pay that. And if there's the payment of sar, then how would he get malchus? Again, we don't have a simultaneous obligation of mammon and malchus. Explains the Gemara b'mifuta. We're discussing a woman that was seduced to have an act, and as Rashi points out, that a woman who's seduced to have an act, we learned over there, the halacha is, actually we'll learn over here in a few more days, the halacha is that whenever there's an act of seduction, there is no tsar, and therefore since there is no tsar, there is no pain, there's no monetary payment for the shaita that was seduced. What is there only? There is only malchus, and that is what the Mishnah Makis is discussing. Explains the Gemara 5 lines down, Asha das lahachi, now that you're telling me this, really you could say our Mishnah and the Mishnah Makis is referring to a sister that's a naira, that's between the age of 12 and 12 and a half, and not a girl who's older at 12 and a half. So what's the case that you get makis? The Yisaima. The case is that she's a Yisaima, she's an orphan, umefuta, and she was seduced. And that would be the case that again, there'll be no baishas in Magam because she was, there'll be no sar, because she was seduced, and there'll be no baishas begam because she's a yisaima. That will be the case of the Mishnah Malkis that she'll receive, that the man will receive Malkis. So 2 potential ways of explaining this discrepancy between our Mishnah and the Mishnah and Malkis. But says the Gemara, based on what Ula just taught us, we see a yisaid, we see a fundamental din that we're going to talk about basically for the rest of the day, a large sugya in the Gemara Malkis. Alma, we see, Kusavar Ula Kolecha The premise of Ula's entire answer in differentiating the two the Mishnahs were that anytime you can have both, what's going to happen? You're going to pay money. That's our Mishnah. In our Mishnah, we're saying that you potentially have both. So what do? You pay. You pay and you don't get Malchus. So ask the Gemara, Mina Leilu Ulaha. Where does Ula know this from? Where does Ula know this rule from? That any time that there's a potential to get mamoin, a payment, and Malchus, that you're only going to get the payment and not Malchus. Explains the Gemara, Ula learns it out from someone that damages his friend. In that case, when someone damages his friend, he should pay him for his damages, and he gets malchus for being over the law of the Torah of damaging your friend. And yet we know the halacha is you can pay the monetary compensation, you do not get malchus. So from there, by we learn out to the rest of the Torah, everywhere says ula. Lucky. So says Ula, attempt number one, you know where we learn it out from? You wound your friend, you should get both, and we know you only have monetary compensation. You do not get malchus, so too, we're going to learn it out too everywhere else. Ask the Gemara 1 second. Chayvel b'chaveiro is unique. There's 5 payments one has to pay. As Rashi here points out, Nezik, Sar, Ripoy, Shevis, and Boishis, the payments, the tsar, the pain, the reaper, the amount to heal the person, the shevis, the amount that he was out of work, or the baishes and the humility. And so says the Gemara, Chayvel is a unique halacha. It's very unique that there's 5 payments when you damage someone. So maybe that's the reason you don't get malchus and you have to do the payment. But maybe everywhere else, for example, in our Mishnah, if someone forces a girl to have relations, maybe in that case there would indeed be malchus and not money. Could you learn out from Chayvel b'chaveiro? And now the Gemara says, and if you're going to tell me v'mayna l'kula, and if you're going to tell me that, wait, a different reason why you can't learn out from Chayvel b'chaveiro, because maybe money is essentially a kula. Any time that we have the option of giving someone a monetary payment and an option of giving him malchus to make him pay is more mekel, is more kal, is more lenient. I could still tell you that chayvel you can't learn from. You know why? Chavala, hitting someone is very unique. What's unique about it? That when you hit your friend, you have to pay 5 things, as we just said. But it's an entity that there are times that it's mutter to hit. When is it mutter to hit? Hutar mechlale bebezdin. Bezdin's allowed to hit. The entire premise of Malchus, entire premise is that Bezdin hits someone. So maybe the entity of Chavala, the entity of damaging and hitting cannot be learned out from. Why not? Because there are times that even Bezdin does it. So says the Gemara, there's 2 different reasons potentially we cannot learn out from Chayvel b'chaveiro. Ella Gamar me'idim zaymin. Says the Gemara, so you know where Ula learned out that Mammon and Malchus, you pay Mammon and not Malchus from Eidim Zaymin. What Eidim Zaymin? Eidim Zaymin is when someone falsely testifies and someone else says, how did you testify that this person did this act? You were with us, Imanu Ayisim, you were with us elsewhere. And the halach of Eidim Zaymin is, says the Gemara, Ma Eidim Zaymin di Gamamanu Malchus Mamana Mishal Makilalaki. In any case of Eidim Zaymin, where there would be a potential monetary payment and Malchus, they only have to pay and they don't get Malchus. So Avkolecha di Gamamanu Malchus Mamana Mishal Makilalaki. So says the Gemara, learn out from Eidim Zaymimim. But ask the Gemara again. Eidim Zaymin are unique, as we'll see more coming up. The Eidim Zaymin is a very unique entity. There's no din of a hasra. Usually in Bezdin, the only time you're chay is if you're warned what you did. But Eidim Zaymin is different. Eidim Zaymin, as we'll see, is Xeris Haikasav for other reasons as well, that you don't need hasra, so you can't learn out from Eidim Zaymin. And similarly flips the Gemara of Imayna L'Kulan, if you're going to tell me that paying by Eidim Zaymin is inherently a leniency, you Shekaim Lo maybe the reason is because Eidim Zaymin has a different reason it's different. What's coming out is the Gemara is giving us 2 reasons why you can't learn out from Chayvel, 2 reasons you can't learn out from Eidim Zaymin. Either a Chomer Dika reason, Eidim Zaymin doesn't need Asra, or a Mekel Dika reason, that Eidim Zaymin didn't do an action. So says the Gemara classically, 6 lines from the bottom, El Gamar, Mitar Vayu, we learn out from the entity of Chayvel B'Chaveiroi and Eidim Zaymin. And a classical Tzad HaShav, that anytime we find 2 things in the Torah that have the same din, and each one has a leniency and a stringency, and the other one does not have the same leniency and stringency, we can learn out from those two to somewhere else. And then we have these two entities of damaging your friend, and Eidim Zaimamin. What's the halacha? That any time that when these two entities have an option that we're not sure, do they pay or do they get malchus, the halacha is they have to pay. Any time that we have the same option of money and malchus, what's the halacha? We learn from Eidim Zaymin with connection with Chavala. The halacha is always going to be you pay and you do not get malchus. But ask the Gemara 1 second. If now we're going to prove that these two entities are unique in their own right, we can't learn out anything else. Each one has something unique about it. Each one has a reason to be more chomer, and each one has a reason to be more kal. Now, it's true that each one's chomer and kula are not the same, and therefore the Gemara's question is not so simple. But the Gemara says that each one has its own element of chomer and kula, so maybe you cannot learn out from it. So we're back to square one. So to summarize the entirety of Amud Aleph, as we go headstrong into Amud Beis, what's going on over here is we're looking for the source of Ula. Ula answered up this stira between our Mishnah that said that there's a din of mamoin, of kinas, of chamishim shekel kesef, of one who forcefully ma'anes rapes a naira. The halacha is to be 50 silver coins. And the Mishnah in Malchus that says you get Malchus. Ula said he differentiated between the two. One is Naira, one is Boigaris. And the Gemara said, we see from Ula Yisaid, we see a rule that whenever you have an option to do both, you're going to have to pay and not get Malchus. What's the source? We tried to learn out from Chavala, it didn't work. We tried to learn from Eidim Zaymin, it didn't work. We tried to learn out from both, it didn't work. As we turn over to the base, and the base says the Gemara, Ula tachas gomer. Says the Gemara, Ula's going out from Exir Shava of the word Tachas. It says over here with regard to our case of the Naira that a man is ma'anis, a man forces to have relations. Tachas asher ina. Tachas, he violated her. And it says elsewhere, ayin tachas ayin. You pay an eye for an eye. We know when it says eye for an eye, you don't actually pay with your eye. Bezin doesn't go and take away your eye. Rather, what does it mean ayin tachas ayin? The word tachas means the monetary payment. So to by us, when it says tachas because you forced her to have relations, where tachas owns in to ayin tachas ayin to teach us a monetary payment is that which is necessary. So source number one of Ula is tachas gzeir shava from ayin tachas ayin to our case of Naira that was ma'anes that the halacha is going to be that you have a choice of mammon and malchus. What do? Just like ayin tachas ayin you pay money and not malchus, so too by us you pay money and not a malchus. Rav Yochanan Amar says Rav Yochanan a second way of what? Not a second source, a second way of differentiating between our Mishnah and the Mishnah and Malchus. Our Mishnah said if someone forces a girl to have relations, halacha is you pay 50 silver coins. The Mishnah and Malchus is the exact same list of sister, etc., of nida, of brothers, of a father, sister, etc., or sister from the father, I should say. And there it said you get Malchus stira. What is it? It says Rav Yochanan. Both cases are referring to the same girl. Referring to the same girl, what does our Mishnah say? You pay 50 silver coins, and that Mishnah say you get Malchus? A different differentiation. Different cases. In Malchus, in Makis, why do you get Malchus? Because there was Hasra. There was a warning. There's a warning, you get Malchus. It's a daraisa. We hit him, we give him Malchus. In our Mishnah, there was no Malchus. That's what you have to get. The monetary payment. Now, similar to what we said in Amud Aleph in Ula, Alma, what do we see Rav Yochanan holds? Because Rav Yochanan is the exact opposite of Ula. Then when we have two potential choices, and you get us wrong, you get warned, what's the halacha according to Rav Yochanan? Malka lakim manalei mashalim. Then you get Malchus. So now, Ula said, and when we have Mammon and Malchus, what do you get? You get Mammon like your Mishnah. Rav Yochanan said you have Mammon and Malchus, and you have Hasra, you have warning. You get Malchus, the Mishnah Makis. Minalei Rav Yochanan. Where Rav Yochanan know this from his end? As everyone can anticipate, there's going to be a bit of an overlap between the Joshas of Rav Yochanan and Ula. Says Rav Yochanan Makra, 10 lines down of Lamed Beis, says the Pasik with regard to Malchus Kedei Rish Asayi, that you get Malchus in according to the act of wickedness, the Rasha that you did. Mishum Risha Achas Atom Echayvoi V'Atom Echayvoi Mishum Shtei Rish Asayi. From this Pasik we learn out you get punished for one wickedness. and not two. Meaning that if you have an option of two wickednesses, an option of payment and malchus, you don't get both. Rather, which one do you get? B'samach le, and the psukim continue. And it's the next pasuk in Dvarim Chavei Beis and Gimel. Arboim yakenu, you get malchus. So says Rabbi Yochanan, we learn out from the pasuk of Kedei Rishasi that whenever you have an option of get both, you get one. Which one? Malchus. And now, let's just give the outline of what the Gemara is about to do. Any raya that we had in Amud Aleph to Ula that taught us that you get money and not Malchus is now going to be a kasha on Rav Yochanan. For example, we're about to ask from Chayvel b'Chaveira when you damage your friend, which we saw in Amud Aleph was almost a source to Ula. We fell off from it, but that was a potential source to teach me that you have to get a payment and not Malchus. So now, according to Rav Yochanan, what are you going to do with that pasuk? We have a pasuk that says you get payment and not Malchus. And you, Rav Yochanan, just taught us what? They get malchus and not payment. So I asked the Gemara, two lines on the white lines. What do you do with the fact that in every case of chavala, when you damage your friend, you have to pay and not get malchus? If you're going to suggest, maybe you know why over there you get money and not malchus. It's because there was no hasra, there was no warning. But if you had hasra, if there was a warning and you damage your friend, what would you get? You would actually get malchus. Can't be, says the Gemara of Rabbi Yochanan, two lines down in the white lines. Hako, when the pasuk says you hit someone, hako shein by shava bruta, is hako that was not worth a shava bruta. 1 second. Loika, that is when you get malchus. Hey, Chitami, what is the case that you hit your friend and you damage him the amount of not a shava brut and you get malchus? If you didn't get asra, why are you getting malchus? Must be you had asra. We warned you and you hit him anyways and you damage him a very minor damaging, not worth a shava bruta. And yet it said what? Now you get malchus. What's the obvious implication? Only when you smack the guy, you give him a little bit of damage. Not such a big deal. That's when you get malchus. But the obvious implication is us shava bruta. If you damage the guy, you hit him hard, you break his arm, etc. So what do you see? Even though there was asra, even though there was a warning in the case of chavala, we see you're only getting payment and not malchus. You, Rav Yochanan, just taught us that any time you have money and malchus with asra, you should get malchus and have money. A bomb kasha on Rav Yochanan. Answers the Gemara at the end of the fourth very wide line. Kida Amar Rav Illa explains. You know how Rav explains? No, Rav Yochanan is going to answer. Rav Yochanan is going to answer like Rav Illa. Rav Illa says it's explicit in the Torah. Edim Zayman has to pay. Is a special din over here that when someone damages his friend, he has to pay. Meaning, Rav Yochanan is conceding that it's a good kasha. You're asking me from Chavola, I, Rav Yochanan, hold you generally get malchus. And you're proving me from Chavola that there's going to be a din of payment? Yes. Maskim, you're right, but that's an exception. Just like Rav Illa taught us that Edim Zayman is an exception, so too Chayvel b'Chavir is an exception. And you can't learn from there to anywhere else. So I, Rav Yochanan, my rule stands. My rule of differentiating between the two cases of the Mishnah Bayas and the Mishnah Makis is when there is Asra, there's not Asra. The differentiation being that when there's Asra, you get Malchus. You're asking from Chayvel b'Chavir that there's no Malchus. That's a special and unique case. Says the Gemara. Now let's go into the statement of Rav Illa. Where did Rav Illa get this from? On the following. Someone gives testimony that someone owes someone else 200 zuz, they are found to be zayim, meaning we find out they could not have actually seen that Ruvain owes Shimon $200 because Ruvain, because the Eidim were in Florida at the time of that loan. What's the halacha? Like in Umishalmim, they get both. They have to get malchus, they demand, they have to pay. Why? Rameir holds a unique din, you get both, Mamin and malchus, because it's a different reason, it's a different shame, as the Gemara Malchus discusses extensively. There's two isurim in the Torah, one for Eidim Zaymin that gives you malchus, and one for the payment, so it's two different dinim. No, call him Eshalim, and I like it. When you pay, you never get malchus. That is the din of the Chachamim. And this is where The Chachamim, it's a unique halacha. Why? Why don't we ask in the Chachamim, says the Gemara, V'nei Kol Aloikein Mishalim? Why don't the Chacham say the opposite? We have a choice here. We have money and malchus. Rameir says both. Chachamim say one. Which one? Says the Chachamim money. How do you know? V'nei Kol Aloikein Mishalim. Maybe you should say you get malchus and not money. So Amar Rav Hila, this is where Rav Hila said his din. It's explicit that what? You get money and not malchus. Where did this come from? Mechti says the mark. It says in the Torah that what happens to Eidim Zayim we do to him what he tried to do to his friend. Yad biyad l'amali. So there's a different pasuk that's completely unnecessary. It says Yad biyad, like we saw a few moments ago. Ayin tachas ayin. It says similarly by Yad by a hand. Why didn't he to tell me that? You know why? He says Rav Hila. That Rav Hila learned out that the special din by Eidim Zaymin, a din that what? You get payment and not malchus. A special din by Eidim Zaymin, and similarly the Gemara is answering for Rav Yochanan that what? When it comes to chayvel v'chaveira, it's the same thing. It's a special exception that you get money and not malchus, and the general rule of Rav Yochanan stands, the general rule being that you normally will get malchus and not money. This case of Eidim Zaymin, and as we're about to see, the case of chayvel v'chaveira is unique. Explains the Gemara like we just said, chayvel v'chaveira nami. Chayvel v'chaveira is also unique. Michti, it says, ksiv kasher asa kein yasalai. Says just like you do to him should be done to him. Kain yinasein lamali. So why does the pasuk have to say so you should give it to him? From there we learn out and that's going to be mamain. So that's how we're going to conclude over here. We're going to pick up tomorrow why Rav Yochanan doesn't hold of Ula. Let's just do a quick synopsis. Rav Yochanan learned the exact opposite of Ula. Rav Yochanan learned that the way to answer up the steeras, one is Asra, one is not. When there's Asra, there's Malchus. Why is there Malchus? What happened to the case of Chayvel Chaver that there's money? Says the Gemara, because Rav Yochanan is going to tell me like Rav Hila. Eidim Zaymin is special, Chayvel Chaver is special. Both of them have special dinim of Kenyan Nasin Boy, Yad Biyad, special dinim telling me that Eidim Zaymin, a special din telling me that Chayvel Chaver has to pay money and does not get Malchus. But the general rule, says Rav Yochanan, is when we have a choice of money and Malchus, you get Malchus if there's Asra, whereas Ulan Amad Aleph taught us that whenever we have a choice of money and Malchus, you get money and not Malchus. Tomorrow we'll pick up from the last line where Rav Yochanan and Ula will have the classical game of ping pong, figuring out why each does not hold like the other.